go as quickly as possible on what can be. So, for instance, this is something we can go very quickly on. The only element which is quite interesting, I would say here, is that, and that's really the message I want to push to you as about who I am, is I'm coming from your shoes. So I'm coming actually from the track of services on the market for more than 20 years. I was delivering solutions of automation and content management, workflow, and digital actually end to end, digitalizing the interactions of customers all the way through. And only about 8 years ago, I dropped the services business to take over the ECM business development at IBM for Belgium and Luxembourg. Then what we've done as well, and that's pretty good introduction on this, is that we had several portfolios in the past in terms of software for workflow and automation end to end. And the last 3 years, we have brought all these together under one single umbrella, which is called Digital Business Automation, and that's what I'm leading now for Belgium. The portfolio has been pretty broad enough, and that's what I will be presenting to you today. So the focus session on today would be about the IBM Cloud Pak for Automation. So what is that for the people who don't know about it already? And then I will also expose a little bit in a broader sense what IBM is doing for the moment, how do we profile on the market, and specifically for the Cloud Pak for Automation, what's coming next for the people actually who know already about it. I think that there are some nifty features coming up at the end of the session anyways, as about the roadmap too. Okay, we will have some time at the end of the session for question and answers for the people who didn't leave in the meanwhile or didn't sleep by then. So again, I'll try to be as interesting as possible to avoid that. Now, in terms of how do we profile in the market, IBM, I mean, is known for lots of things, and in the recent years, even though we continue developing lots of different technologies from both hardware and software part, we still try actually to go through a consolidation phase where we really keep focusing on what we call the key imperatives, what we really believe are bringing and shaping up the world of tomorrow and delivering value at our customers. And therefore, in terms of software, what we've done is, you probably heard about that a year ago, we've done the biggest acquisition in the history of IT by taking over Red Hat for several reasons. The open source culture actually is definitely one of them. The fact that IBM is investing in Linux for the enterprise for more than 20 years. The fact that we are also contributing extremely to open source is part of the genes of IBM too. And one of the reasons also, which was key for us, is because we are profiling ourselves towards what we believe will be the future of tomorrow, which is an hybrid cloud world. The idea is that if you look here underneath in terms of infrastructure, our view is that in the same way that any customer nowadays for its IT can go to one or the other local provider in terms of data centers, can purchase any type of hardware and so for computing or storage, it will become the same thing in the next few months and the next few years, in terms of the type of cloud that you select for running something. For the moment, we still see a kind of captive world in terms of clouds, where if I start with AWS, I will probably not go to Azure, etc. However, the last 6 to 12 months, what we see is that customers actually go where the flow goes and where it's more interesting for them. So if storage tomorrow and backup is more interesting at AWS, at Amazon, I will take some subscriptions for terabytes at Amazon, but I will link that up potentially with some processing features for Office 365 at Azure, maybe take some part of the Cloud Pak running in SaaS model in the IBM cloud. So the idea is that if you come up with a vision where your processing power, your storage, the different elements of your IT are stored all over the place with some private cloud of your own and some public clouds. Therefore, you need a console. to architecture all that to maintain actually the different pieces altogether. And that's exactly what Red Hat OpenShift is delivering, right? Red Hat OpenShift is a Kubernetes, for the people who know about it, it's a Kubernetes console. That means that it's an orchestrator for governing some microservices which are delivered in the shape of containers, and therefore either with your own development or the customer's developments, either through vendors who deliver these containers, you can just run them wherever you want. These also delivers an awful amount of gains, operational gains, in the sense that, for instance, if I just take one of my biggest customers in Belgium, the Ministry of Finance, in some cases, depending on some specific elements of security, etc., setting up an environment for their ECM storage could take up to a week. Now we've done tests about a few weeks back with that new form factor of the containers, and we can deliver the same thing in about 30 minutes. So I mean, you realize that when you do a setup in 30 minutes, that gives for training purposes, for labs, for testing things, that gives some level of agility that they didn't have before. Secondly, IBM, through the strategy that we are pursuing, we are delivering software in a constant delivery model. That means that we come up with fixes, cumulative fixes, fix packs, as we call them, every 3 to 6 months. So every single package that you will get from IBM, you can expect actually to have a new release coming up every 3 to 6 months. And therefore, that means that either you can have an environment where you can benefit from that, meaning very quickly deploy these new releases every 3 to 6 months, either you will lose, actually, in terms of return on investment, you will lose on the added value that we are bringing every 3 to 6 months with new features, right? So how do you maintain that in a traditional manner? In a standalone world where I need to take the binaries and install first an application server, then a database to host the data, then the application layers on top, connecting all these together, testing the services, etc. All that takes time. Right, and that's the reason why most of the customers, no matter if it's in my shop or in others, they take up to 2 years, up to the moment that the software license is no longer supported, in order to plan for an upgrade. And that means that, yeah, for the 2 years window, they just lose new features. So what we are doing here is I mean, that's really what you need to take up from that slide, is that we articulated our software portfolio into specific pillars. Cloud Pak for application, Cloud Pak for data hosting, whatever has to do with data governance, with AI as well, analytics. A Cloud Pak for integration, which is all the middle tier of how do I convert and connect and interoperate different systems all together. Automation for automating business processes. Okay, so it's really from a business standpoint that we speak here of automation. For instance, Red Hat speaks of automation in the sense of automating the operations of an IT environment, which is not the same. Here, when we speak about Cloud Pak for automation, it's really about making sure that the day-to-day business processes of any organization, governmental agency or private sector, can really run as smoothly as possible, and where we use the people where they can really deliver value. Now, we have the Cloud Pak for security, of course, and one which is for multi-cloud management. And multi-cloud management, that's the little add-on which gives actually for Red Hat OpenShift the ability to orchestrate the deployment of application across multiple cloud providers at the same moment. Okay, so now. Your reality as mine has probably changed very much in the last few weeks. We are one of the things that we are really facing very much is some kind of duality in blurry zones, I would say, between the personal life and the work life. So in terms of balance, that's not always easy. That is just for crystallizing a little bit the fact that digital has become part of our lives, and whoever has not invested invested in this in the last few years has found themselves in a big trouble in the last 2 weeks. However, you find out that we come up with a kind of messages coming from our organizations about the fact of making sure that we keep a healthy work-life balance, but at the same moment we shouldn't be disengaged on the business, right? Or adapt to the change. We need to accept the fact that we work like that, and in the future that other type of such crisis might happen, where we will have to change our reality day after day. So, but at the same moment, we should still keep focused, sharp on the next quarter, on what we have to deliver day after day, etc. Now, if you look to the reality of that, you probably found yourself, as I do, that juggling all together with 3 kids on my side at home for weeks and weeks wasn't easy. At the same time, giving webinars and making offers, and at the end, you find yourself doing day after day lots of activities which don't always deliver value, right? So it's long hours and lots of repetitive stuff where you could wish to have something which can help you out with, and that's really what we are positioning ourselves, is to make sure that if you don't want disengagement of your people through this type of crisis, if you want people actually to still keep up with some energy as about fulfilling the role of their organization, you need to make sure also that they are giving the right tools and that they can focus eventually on what brings that value. So honestly, I have no problem working straight for 15 hours for something where my experience of the last 25 years is bringing value. When it comes to reading emails again and again and again and filling up documents which deliver no value whatsoever, honestly, that's where I start feeling tired. You probably share the feeling. So when you see also organizations such as Hertz, which has decades in a worldwide level renting cars, being now through that single wave of crisis in a couple of months, getting into nearly bankrupt in the United States, you really feel like we are really going through Darwinism to this extent. So it's really not about the biggest companies. It's not the best brands known. Kodak went through the same type of crisis. I mean, making sure that you align your strategy to what the customers are expecting is one thing. Engaging in the right way your audience is extremely important. However, you need also some level of agility, and level of agility means that if any project that the government is asking you to follow in terms of new type of rules to conduct your business, that is something which takes on your side about a year to deploy. That's obviously a problem, right? So you don't have, I mean, we are seeing that you don't have these months and months to face, and that means that eventually you need to have some level of agility in terms of the tooling that you are using. Now, if you look at what intelligent automation is and how it's defined, it's more or less, and all the analysts are coming up with the same ideas. It's more or less the idea that we use the best of the technologies which are available for the moment in terms of automating the day-to-day tasks. And for doing that, there are several components, several Lego blocks that IBM has aligned all together. And one of them is AI. So everyone is speaking about artificial intelligence the last 2-3 years. We have a well-known brand for this at IBM, which is the Watson brand, where we have end products, so ready-to-use solutions, as well as technologies, meaning API calls that you can just come and consume through your own applications. And all that is now infused in the different software pillars that you've seen previously, and the different cloud packs at IBM. So, of course, when you know that AI is there, when you know that robotic process automation exists, when you know that several elements actually of low-code technologies allow you to create applications very fast. I mean, all that is there. Gartner is making some good money about delivering reports on all these toolings month after month. Why is that you don't benefit from it at home, that I even sometimes lack some of these, or that they come not fast enough to my taste. And that has to do with the fact that we are closer to 10% of the organizations for the moment, which can really say that when we are investigating with their CXOs, the fact that they have really a program which is ongoing, which delivers for the moment some hyper automation and some value through these all elements working all together and infused by AI. Why is that? I mean, all these technologies are there, right? So one of the answers is you guys. It's the fact that there is a huge skill gap at customers. They first of all they hear about several things, they read about several things, but articulating all that into one meaningful approach is not always easy for them. So there is a piece of a skill gap that we need to address, and that means both with our business partners and empower you in order to deliver these type of skills and capabilities articulated in a strategy towards the customer. That's one thing. On the other side, it's also about technology. So sometimes they don't know that things exist, right? So that's where the added value of trusted advisors come into play, and therefore, yeah, we need to all together to go and vehicle that message to them. Things exist. They are there. They are delivering value for some players on the market for the moment. If they want to face the world of tomorrow, they need also, I mean, to be relevant in that market. Every company nowadays in digital needs now to move on. What we've seen in the last COVID wave is that even the base of the pyramid now is going digital, because all these small businesses, they didn't look at that in the past, and now without this they cannot survive. So it's important for everyone. Now, you can have the best automation tools ever, the best ones. If you don't give that the right fuel, the automation doesn't flow. So data and the data governance layer is the fuel of automation. And therefore, that's another dimension that we need to make sure that the customer has in mind, which is making sure that they can structure the right information, that they can filter it, that they can consolidate it in a way that we can base judgment of systems upon these. If you don't get the right parameters, obviously, whatever the outcome planned is, and whatever the rule might be, you won't apply the right rule because you don't get the right parameters. So here, when we go at customers, the first thing, even though it's not in my shop, the first thing that I will ask is, do you have the right level of data science on board? Do you have the right level of data consolidation processes in order to make sure that we can base ourselves on these? Deploying a business rules engine without having the right information means that you just go for flow decisions anyways. And transparency and governance, that has to do also with the fact that we need, as part of these type of projects, there are two layers actually over there, is that we are speaking to business because we actually deliver business value, but by means of tooling and IT, and we need to have, in terms of governance for these projects, both IT and business aligned all together. Too often we speak either to the one, either to the other. Here, what we've seen in lots of cases, and I've seen in the list some of our BPs, business partners, who lived that through with us on big accounts, is the fact that when IT is not aligned with business, I mean, at the end of the day, your project cannot deliver its value. So that's one thing. And also, we need also to make sure that from a compliance perspective, the tooling that we are delivering is able to be audited extremely fast and delivers actually the right kind of assets and insights from an auditing perspective as well. So what do we do today that we didn't do so far? Because obviously, I started in '98 with scanning projects and document management when the PDF was on the market for about 5-6 years. We were digitalizing processes ever since. Now, what's changed is that for years you could, and with the idea of best of breed approach that all the analysts were pushing, a customer wanted to have the best database with the best application server, with the best CRM tool, the best ERP, etc. And what we were doing with all these tools, most of them were ending up with an acronym with an M for management, meaning that we were managing customer relationship, we were managing data, we were managing documents and content, etc., etc. So the idea was, I'm so afraid of losing stuff that I need a system in order to store it. But store it, it's fine, and retrieving the information is fine. However, that still sets the human being as the bottleneck of the whole process, right? So that means that if you really want to deliver value nowadays, our goal is no longer to only manage, that's the foundation, but it's really to go up to automating whatever can be, as well as interacting and coming up, advising, so enhancing or augmenting, as some people say, augmenting the knowledge workers. So you, me, doing our job every day. So the idea here is really going from a management world to an hyper-automation world, and hyper-automation is really when you start orchestrating the software bots, for instance, software capabilities of automation, and pull the attention of the right people, advising them based on historical data and based on machine learning as about what might be the next best action. One thing as well, and that is the risk that we are running now this year and the next 2 years. That's that after the explosion of the internet bubble, for about 10-15 years, what we've seen is that everyone was running after cost savings. Okay, that's a driver, but again, if you don't ensure that your investments are done by changing the way that you engage with customers, by being ubiquitous in the sense that whenever I'm deploying a new process, a new application, this is reachable right away on any kind of device. I mean, starting my process on a mobile, continuing in the train with my tablet, and ending up at home with my computer. That's where digital is no longer, right? So the idea is making sure that in every single step of the way, you are delivering your presence where the customer wants it at the moment that the customer or your audience wants it. And the last element is that the idea also is that we went from a set of bricks. So we were delivering the best database, we were delivering the best this and that, the best BPM engine, etc. But the glue between the different elements was costing an awful amount of money to customers, up to a point where it was no longer delivering value even to our BPs, because when you spend more time maintaining all these bricks all together, because just naturally they come up with new releases and changes in their architecture individually at different moments, that becomes actually a juggle game of making sure that this delivers value at some point for the customer, right? So here, that's exactly what we try to address with the Cloud Pak for Automation, is one easy model to deploy and maintain the environment, and different capabilities which are aligned all together in order to speak to each other. So the glue actually is provided by IBM as long as you want to consume these capabilities inside the IBM box. And that's a little bit the ramp up that we lived through in the last few years, meaning going from digitizing work elements, applying AI on top for the last 18 months, and delivering now with new type of technologies, low code, zero code mashups, and also with robotic technologies, the ability to come to what Gardner calls this hyper-automation concept. Now, what do I do when I go to hyper-automation, and what are the challenges? So obviously for repetitive kind of work, industrializable, I would say, kind of work, business process management tools are there, I mean, ever since I'm in IT. And again, I started pretty early writing code. So for the last 30 years, you had workflow engines. I mean, let's say it like that. And that means that you could have an initial thinking as about what are the next steps? How do I work actually? How do I model that on a piece of paper? I start with this, then I do that, etc. That's your recipe in the kitchen at the end. And we could define that into a system and have everyone comply in an industrialized way to that specific process. Everyone has to do the same thing. But that's like Charlie Chaplin in the modern times. Everyone at the end, as part of a flow, is just doing the same move again and again and delivers a limited set of value. Now, if you look on the other side of the spectrum, What was more challenging in the recent years was when you drive, when it's the expertise of people who are driving the process, not the other way around. So here it's the process driving people, here is the people driving process, and you need systems which allow you to do that. That's how we came up 5-6 years ago with a tool that I mean, it was a platform of its own called IBM Case Manager. We were extremely successful with this on the market, I must say, and this has evolved very much. But again, case management was fantastic whenever you had to look at a specific customer and in a specific interaction and engage with on a specific case. So you could really have lots of flexibility, but then you needed also, for some parts of the process, for instance, to go for a transactional model, to go and load massive data, etc. And that was not meant for that, for instance. So what we wanted eventually with the Cloud Pak for Automation is to deliver one single platform. That was really the aim, which can deliver 360 degrees of the requirements for automation of a specific company, right? So what do we have now in that box? It's three elements which are key for defining the Cloud Pak for Automation, and one is automation through microservices. So the fact of having a system which is built upon some pieces which are independent from each other. If at some point this piece is falling, the system can make sure that it can reprovision that system, that part of the system right away. So when my application server is falling, it's not all my applications in the enterprise which are falling. It's only extremely limited, and for some seconds, by the time that the system will just reprovision this specific box. So by going like that with delivering systems through these containers and assembling these containers through one meaningful platform, which is at IBM now, the Red Hat OpenShift stack, you have the ability to be extremely resilient. That's one thing, and extremely performant as well, because that, in terms of virtualization, if you think about it, what you do is you virtualize applications, you don't virtualize hardware. Screws like the VM world is doing for the last few years. So it's way more performant in the way that you manage your hardware assets. Then what we needed as well is some way to define business applications in an extremely easy way. That means that we are shifting also the attention for our tooling from, and that's something that we initiated now the last 5 years. We are really shifting from developers to initially analysts, and now we even go for what we call, or the market is calling, the citizen developer, which means that if we have some tools which allow us with click to assemble an application, because I'm just activating some features that I think as part of that application might make sense. Honestly, that's really what we want, right? So you use this kind of approach every single day, because that's what mobility has brought to us, is that we are running through workflows without even noticing, based on microservices, on micro apps, which are very good for one single thing. But then if I need to do something more, I mean, I'm taking my picture and then I want to add up some effects, I will take another app, and then I want to write on top some comment, I will take another app, etc. And then at the end, I'm building up like that. By stacking services, I'm building up actually some workflow already, and some application. If you look at it from a transversal vision. Now, the last thing is to reach the definition of Gartner for hyperautomation is I need to have a mixture of people and digital processes, digital workers. So therefore, what we really try to aim with the Cloud Pak for Automation is to deliver at the end some platform which really builds up some digital human beings, some digital people and digital assets that can work by their own, which can prepare and augment me as an individual knowledge worker by preparing my work where my added value actually will be lower. If I need to copy and paste for 1,000 records into different screens, the same things again and again, I can tell you for sure at some point I will make some mistakes. The machine makes way less mistakes than I then. However, processing this data and finding correlations and these kind of things, taking decisions upon these correlations, that's where human beings are pretty well defined by their DNA, right? So that's what we want to do, is automate whatever you want, or whatever you can actually, and then let's try to refocus with the time that we win back on the things that we deliver value upon. And I'm opening now the Cloud Pack for Automation box, and what do I find in it? It's this. It's the different senses, the different capabilities of a human being that we stacked all together with Lego blocks in order to make sure that for any kind of activity, we can come and enhance or even replace sometimes for specific activities the human beings, and therefore again retrieve time for doing things more important. If you look at the way that we analyze and process the information and life actually in Soul, the first thing that's for the people who still have that sense, we start by looking at what we receive, right? We start by perception, we start by analyzing what we see, and therefore try to make the difference between what I know and what I don't know, try to figure out as part of what I see what is relevant and important or not, and at some point after the eyes, what I will mostly do is try to build up some memory of this information, storing actually that information somewhere. Sometimes it might be for short term, sometimes it might be for long term. That is about policies. So there are things that I will keep for a longer term, some things that I will keep for just a few seconds just to take a decision, but I need to store that somewhere. Then in order to process that information and to know what I will be doing with it, I will use some level of cognition. I will try to interpret, to understand what is on a document. That's where we are using Watson actually on our side in order to make sure that we use a natural language processing, for instance, NLP, in order to figure out what is the information that we just received. And then what will I do with this? I will need some logic. And that's what the left brain is doing. Is it's a schematic where depending on some elements I will be doing that, and that at the end is rules, right? It's decision management. That's really what we do with our acquisition a few years back of G Rules, which is now called Operational Decision Manager at IBM, ODM, and ODM is perfect, and it is best in class into giving the hand to business to maintain their business rules. That also means that for the integrators in that call today, the systems integrators, the developers, the consultants, what we are doing through that is isolating the parameters that change into a business process from a system, from an application. So you can write up applications, you can deliver applications to a customer where the specific items which change all the time, all these parameters are put into one single silo, and that silo can be consumed extremely openly through web services, etc., to other line of business applications. So, but they are centralized, and that the screen that you deliver to the customer is really for the analysts. They write in plain English, in plain Dutch, in plain French their statements, and they say that if this and that and that, then that and that and that. Or what we show as well, we can build up the queries in another way, which is by tables. I just have a table with parameters, and I will just go and change these parameters over there. Everyone can use a table and an Excel sheet. So that's eventually what we tried really to do here is to deliver the different senses. And when I'm analyzing what I received, and when I know what I have to do based on my comprehension and based on the rules that I learned, I need to do something. And that's something, either it is by connecting systems together, system to system, what we call also straight-through processing, or I will give the hand back to a user to decide upon the next step. And that's where we create tasks. So on one side, you have the BPM story where systems can speak to systems. On the other side, you have the case management story where inside the central nervous system, you can delegate some tasks to human beings in order to decide based on their expertise. Eventually, if you look at all these first elements here, these can run in an automated way, in an unattended way, in a backend way, actually. So it's really backend services that you can really deploy extremely fast, and that can deliver value by their own. For whatever we cannot integrate on a backend side, because it's a legacy application, because we no longer have the code, because, for instance, it's not modern enough, and we don't have APIs to call. What you can still do is use the hands and therefore simulate a user on the screen, which will have access to exactly the same applications and the same UIs that you have, which can log also into a mainframe environment of 30 years ago, which can go through the different steps of the menu and deliver exactly what you would do, but way faster and without making mistakes. So that's where we are using actually software robots. And if you look at what you can find in the box in terms of products, that's more or less the list, I would say, of the components that we are fueling all together. So these elements are the core components of our platform that you can look like that in terms of capabilities. That's one way to see them. It's you have the capture part, you store into the content system, FileNet, both unstructured information, data, and content. You can manage your decisions in ODM. You can call these rules, these decisions, by orchestrating them into a workflow or in case management processes. And eventually, you can also, depending on the decisions, depending on the information which is here stored after capturing it, you can also call for parts of the process where it's relevant and where a human being actually is not delivering more value, some software robots as well. Now, all that is obviously in the same way that you and I are evolving, all by using our senses day after day in different type of transactions and different types of activities. We are building up, here it's called operational intelligence. In a real world, you would call that experience. And that experience is captured into a specific layer that, if you look at this functional view here, is residing just below all the other elements, actually. So here we have unified one single UI. Okay, all these products obviously had in the past their own UI. Here it's one single UI on top of all. They deliver one consistent approach and one consistent service rendered to the screen, to the customer, one single customer experience. And we had until last year this silo here where the glue between the different elements was delivered by IBM. Now, that's great. However, we were missing some pieces. Why? Because by listening to our partners, and you are in the call as well, some of them were coming from the workflow and the content part. Some others were coming from the workflow and the decision part, but never touched about content and capture. Some others that we are facing today are coming from the last generation, the Gen Z. They just started into integration with the concepts of low code, zero code, and they right away started with robotics. So they couldn't care less about all these elements. They understand what they are, but they don't master them. So here, how do you go, and if you remember the old startup of the presentation, where the main reason for having 12% of the organizations nowadays deploying successful program on hyperautomation, that's really about that. It's because even though IBM can deliver a glue between an interconnected feature set underneath, you still need to have people mastering all these elements, right? Understanding how to pull all together these different Lego blocks. And that's a real challenge actually for lots of organizations, which is, okay, how do I develop the skills over all of these? Our answer is this layer on top, which is now coming. Actually, it's delivered now for the last 12 months. We have a new release set on the 26th of this month with new versions of these elements, and that's really where we build up our low-code stack, and where we allow people who are not specialists, who don't need to be specialists of these underlying components, to mash up through configuration and through low-end scripting extremely fast the hyper or the in-depth kind of feature sets that you will find into the mid-layer here. Okay, so here it's really, you need to see that part, that above layer here, as a wrap-up somehow for different type of use cases of the in-depth capabilities which are here. And that is fast. That is something which allows you to deliver applications in 3 days, where in the past you needed at least 3 months, if not a year, to deliver. Is that perfect? Maybe not. But in an agile world, and facing, I mean, and that's more important than ever now with the COVID crisis, when the processes with the government, for instance, were changing and the policies were changing every single week, in a waterfall model, in a world where I need first to go and speak to my business, then come up with a 500 pages analysis, and then start up with a most viable product, then move on with the next iteration, etc. I mean, yeah, it's becoming extremely difficult to end up with an application which can render value while the crisis is still there. By the time that you deliver it in that world, the crisis is already over. And you are no longer relevant. So the idea here, the reason why we had a huge acceleration in the last 2 months over the cloud back for automation is extremely about that. It's how can I make sure, and that's the question that I get from social insurances, from governmental agencies, that we are working on several opportunities for the moment. And some deals will be signed up to €1 million really in no time. We have some opportunities that we are working on in like 2 weeks. That's because they were about to go for the market. They had their plans, etc., but they didn't really go for it. And now they really want through POCs to see if the value is there. And if it is, they realize now that they cannot do without. So that's how we go. Now, if you look on that, just to give you some preview on what's in that above layer, digital workers, we spoke about that, and some people are simulating that to, okay, that's the IBM flavor to RPA. That's not the case. So let's make things clear. Digital workers in the IBM world is not RPA. It's consuming RPA potentially, as you can see here. It can consume Watson capabilities and AI. It can consume some operational intelligence by applying AI to the logs of all your events. But eventually, that's a mashup layer where you can actually deploy some skills, what we call skills, for the people using the Alexa digital assistant on the call. You would be familiar with that notion of adding up and extended skills to Alexa. With Alexa, you can go on the website, and you can just go and say, okay, now I would like to add a skill for managing the my light bulbs from Philips. I would like one for automating the I don't know, the coffee machine if it has an API. I would like one for managing the camera events and things like that. So the idea is eventually can just come and stack up additional type of skills. One example here of skill is the fact of classifying documents, so classification. The fact of reading emails and sending emails, that's a skill. And by coupling all together, you can have a read up of email, an extraction of an attachment, pass that to the classification engine, and depending on what it will tell you, apply some AI, and then call based on what you qualified as the type of request. The fact of building up something with a bot, launching a bot for doing something and preparing your work for that process. So here it's really about how do I mash up again the different capabilities of the platform in a more easy way. And if I get to the point that I need a skill that is not delivered as part of the standard library, then it's the job of our business partners to build that up for the customer. But the fact of maintaining I would say, the different skills all together and assembling these applications extremely fast. That's what the digital worker platform will do in the studio, which are low-code approach on, again, delivering the value of the underlying technologies, right? Now, another use case that we are seeing extremely much in the last few months is the fact of having the Watson Assistant. One of the elements that we are looking at for the moment are with some governmental agencies with the tracking and tracing. That is one of the use cases that we were thinking of, which is that eventually having a Watson assistant, a conversational kind of bot where you can come and report where you were when you were infected, etc. That can be really an added value compared even to a human being, because you are not judged by a bot, right? So you can really start up at any point in time your app. You can build up your case saying that I've been infected. This is by looking into the agenda of the person, or by following up the events into into the GPS. You could just find up in the last 2 weeks, where did I go, and then surface that and push that information to the Watson Assistant. Then you can have an RPA process in the back, starting up, preparing work for someone in terms of investigative case management to look at these data and start up looking at what's the next action, what is the next person which were in your vicinity in these 2 weeks that we need to contact as well. If we can find the email address or the presence on social media of that person, potentially to send them some alert, etc., etc. So there are lots of use cases where we are seeing that the platform, by coupling it up with the Watson Assistant, which is peanuts in terms of cost, honestly, and it's a wow effect every single time, can really deliver a high value for self-servicing type of use cases, because that runs all the time, that's never sick, etc. So it's really one worth add-on to the Cloud Pack for automation. And we have several use cases in the presentation that you will get. I will not go through every single one of them, but the idea is that you can really look at, depending on the type of businesses, some scenarios where we can come up very fast at customers with the use cases and the added value that it brought, as well as with reference cases, as you can see here, depending on the type of activity. Now, how do I sell that to a customer? Obviously, lots of CXOs are still looking at Forrester, Gartner, and all these big analysts, where we are extremely well positioned with the platform. And we have here, for the ones of you being familiar with that concept of total economic impact, these are specific Zoom analysis on a platform, on a specific tool in context of a specific customer set. So they go and interview several customers in having the similar type of needs, which can be responded by a specific tooling, and there they come up with their analysis after speaking with the customer and after coming to the conclusion with the customer that these figures are right. So here you can see that in terms of the Cloud Pack for automation, which was previously called the automation platform for digital business, we can come up with huge return on investment. That means that really after a couple of months, you are really gaining value and return on investment, and actually making benefits operationally out of the usage of this. So if you look at the different components which are underneath, of course, what you need as well is to sometimes we go and fight on one single of these components, right? Still, we are delivering the platform. And that is a key element, a key imperative for IBM in the future. And aligning your selling cycles to these key imperatives makes you richer, I would say. Is that you can deliver, for instance, FileNet as a standalone component or DataCap as a standalone component. But if you deliver it as part with the part number of the Cloud Pack for automation, then honestly, the rewards in terms of incentive will be way bigger. And we have for every single one of them the Gartner reports here where we can show that we are leaders. If I align that to some references on the market extremely fast, some of them being official, some of them less for the moment yet. The idea is that we can in any case put customers to speak to other customers about that. Now, when I look at the tooling that we can deliver to you guys, one key element in the past was about assets. So customers were calling Malik, for the ones knowing who Malik is. He's my best half, I would say. He's the tech sales who comes with me at customers and build up all the technical demos with us. The idea is that we were calling upon all the time for having the latest version of that slide deck or having the latest price list, etc. Now, the source in which I go and fetch all these data for preparing actually this slide deck here that you are seeing is one shared with you. That's Seismic. It's a cloud-based digital asset management platform that we are using. And by clicking this link into the slide deck that you will get, you will be able to enter right away to it and therefore see exactly what I see. So you come up and register yourself as a partner, and as a partner you will be able to see the same type of information and get access also to all the commercial plays, the sales plays, and the promos that we are launching every now and then. Okay, so transparency is the key, and again, that's one of the big proof that we are taking for the last couple of years of a channel first kind of approach, where you should be as partners as independent as possible, and we are always there to back you up, but we shouldn't be the bottleneck. Okay, so you are empowered. That's the story. Now, yes, Yanis, but every single time that we need to make a demo, and obviously, as you said, we are not the best, or we cannot be the best at every single one of these pillars, of course. That's why we have built up Blue Demos that you have access to as well. And that is a portal where, depending on, as you can see here, the industry, depending on the type of components as part of the platform that I want, depending on the product, being it the Cloud Pack for automation, etc., I will be given access to pre-built environments. The only thing that I need to do is select one and here say I need to provision that from that date to that date. And in a few minutes, you get an email saying now the machine is there. That is with Voodoo Magic, as we said previously, which is by using actually the containers. Again, that just proves that it works. We really provision these virtual machines under a few minutes, and therefore you can really start up building up. Either, as you can see in some cases, there are labs with scenarios where you can really learn and being hands-on, or in some cases you will be starting up with with an empty machine, and then yeah, it's up to you to build up the demo to the customer. Okay, so again, assets you have. Everything depending on the different phases of a selling cycle, where the customer might want references, might want an overview, a technical overview of, or a functional overview of the platform or a specific component you have, and here you have the demos as well. Now, to end up with what's coming next, and I think that these are the takeaways for the people who know already about the platform. One of the elements which is crucial, and that we were really starving for the last 2 years, where we had for some of you working with us in the past in ECM, for instance, where the customers were using and used to a user-based model, we had to shift the last 2 years into a CPU core model, and that was extremely complicated for some customers which were not used to that. So here, the good news is that we are coming up now for every single of the key elements that we had a user-based model in the past. We now have restored the user-based model. So how do we do that? We actually have now a ratio converting card between the VPC, virtual processor core of the platform, to a set of users. So actually that means that for customers who want to still continue paying not by usage but by user, we can make that one-off kind of transaction where we say, look, okay, for that many users, you will have to pay that many virtual processor cores, and we freeze that vision. That means that after that, if they get more users, of course, they will have at some point to pay for more virtual processor cores, but we freeze in the sense that we will keep an eye on not the usage, but the user base. And in case of audit, in case of compliance review, what we will be checking is about the nature of their users. Okay, so for lots of customers saying, look, I have a tendency to reduce my population while at the same moment, by ROI rules, what I will try to do is to use more and more of your platform. If I pay per CPU, every time that I'm launching a new project, I need to pay for more CPU, right? Yes, of course. But if you start with big organizations, the CPU-based processing license model might be more interesting than user-based. So you have the choice. We have the choice now to come to the customer, make this analysis, this dual kind of offering, and say, okay, in a user-based model, that's what you pay. In a CPU-based model, that's what you pay. But know that user-based, most of the time, is more steady, more stable than going for a user-based. So why not use it now that we have it? Last items to support you into selling. Customers can go and request for their own for the Cloud Pak for Automation to get trial entitlement. So we have a portal. You have the link here that you can share with them. And whenever you start a cycle and whenever they want to have demos, whenever they want to start looking at it on their own behalf, you can help them out by reaching up to this form and fulfill that form with them. And therefore, they will get, as a result, an entitlement key for some period of time, which can be ranging up to 3 months, that they can just use as part of their installation, and they are good to go in case of software compliance audit, because they just have a right key, an official one, right? Now, I will be ending up because we are just reaching the end. I'm sorry for that. There was lots of information, so I'm really trying at least to give you that teaser. And it has to do with the fact that we are coming in the next release of the Cloud Pak, which is planned for the 26th of this month, with all these stars here are new features. Okay, it's new infused features as part of these blocks. So we can see that there is lots shipping in terms of updates and key features. I will not go, because we don't have the time right now to go through all of these, but you will discover some of them as part of the slide deck. And in any case, we are there with Malik to support you into understanding for every one of these what are the new features coming up. Voila. I will end it up here. In case we have questions and people still awake.
Thank you, Yanis. Thank you very much. So if someone has a question, don't hesitate to ask your question now. So I hope that you all enjoyed this session and learned a lot. And again, thank you, Yanis. So we will send the presentation over, and there is also a replay of this session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Yanis?
Yes, oui, pardon, je me suis oublié.
Ok, c'est Vincent ici, hein?
Salut Vincent.
Salut Yanis, ça va? Super pour la présentation, j'ai été prévenu à la dernière minute, mais voilà, j'ai pu un petit peu suivre. Okay. Je voulais juste te dire, concernant le dossier que tu connais, je t'ai laissé un petit message, donc je vais envoyer un mail cet après-midi, je te mettrai en copie, hein.
Ok, très bien. Juste un truc qu'il faudrait vérifier, parce que j'avais mon téléphone ici à côté de moi et je n'ai pas vu de message de toi. Il faudrait voir si c'est pas sur mon ancien numéro, parce que c'est déjà arrivé.
971, attends, je vais vérifier. Oui, c'est vrai que tu as moi j'ai deux numéros en mémoire. Attends, je vais regarder sur lequel j'ai appelé du coup.
Si c'est le 478, c'est mon privé et c'est la raison pour laquelle je ne l'ai pas vu, alors je vais vérifier. Ça va.
Figure-toi que j'ai appelé sur le numéro fini par 39.
Ouais, donc c'est mon privé. Ça va.
Excuse-moi, désolé. Mais c'est pas grave. Je vais le noter dans mon phone. J'ai les deux alors, mais je vais noter PR et prof et privé. OK. À
Ok,
bientôt.
je te reviens. Merci en tout cas.
Merci, hein. Au revoir.
Au revoir. Any other question? Any other remark? Ok. So I guess I can leave. Merci encore pour votre présence et votre attention. À la prochaine alors.